Hi, and welcome to Mighty Networks. My name is Shauna Stefanchik. I am Networks, and today I'm going to be talking to you about providing clarity of the priority standards. This slide is just a little bit about my past as a former teacher, coach, district curriculum and state RPDC consultant, following contents, and the five little people in the picture are the reason I am now an independent consultant on my own, doing this work with schools in the Missouri area today. Today, I'm going to be talking about 5 steps of how we can provide clarity of the priority standards for teachers. Number 1 is just ensuring that all your teachers are aware of the new standards, how they can find them on DESE, which I will walk through, and providing them hard copies and some think time around them. 2 is ensuring that your staff has time to review state documents, to anchor them in the correct division of proficiency and activities of what proficiency looks like on each of those priority standards. And you can see in parentheses, I've written, you cannot rely on your textbook. A common barrier that I see in many of the districts I work with is that teachers rely heavily on their textbook being their curriculum, where our standards are our guaranteed and viable curriculum in Missouri. So everything we do needs to build on those standards. And sometimes our textbooks will be coded with the same standard, but it is not taught and assessed the same proficiency that it is at the state. So I believe that causes a huge vertical alignment issue. And that's one of the biggest problems we have in education now, is a misinterpretation of our standards. So I'll talk a little bit about how you can utilize some of these state documents to help that with that clarity. And then once those things are done, really helping teachers determine priority standards and a pacing guide for how they should be taught. After that's done, helping make assessments that mirror the map and rigor and question type will help teachers do the last thing, which is backward design and align their instruction to the clarity of the priority standards. So let's dive right in. The first thing is understanding the priority standards. And I'm not showing my slideshow so that I can easily hop over here. I'm going to show you, if you go to the DESE website, which is not always the easiest to navigate. So I'm just going to, oh gosh, and now what am I doing? It's not always the easiest to navigate. So that's why I'm going to do that while I'm on the call with you here. If you go to the top of the website to educators, let me move it over so we can see a little bit, educators and curriculum. So you'll see on the left, it'll give me a drop down, educators curriculum. And then if we come here, there's a quick link box. You'll see it says priority standards. I'm going to click on that and scroll down, and here they are. All 4 content priority standards. When you double click on that, it gives you a PDF that you can download and print off hard copy for teachers, which I would recommend doing. And let them highlight on that thing. Let them make notes. That's how they're going to remember. You'll also notice under these boxes something that says supporting materials. These were added this late summer, early fall. There's some supporting materials under each one of these. You're going to want to give teachers time to look at those things, and I'll refer to some of them, but just know that that is here, and this is very worthwhile for all of your teachers to have time digitally and hard copy to look at some of those things that will help provide clarity on them. I'm going to walk through ELA. Their standards were built vertically. They were prioritized. However, on the second bullet, there might be some priority standards that your district also wants to recommend. Specifically K through 2, my own consulting company, I have provided my own list of recommended priority standards. For instance, in kindergarten, beginning, middle, and end was not a priority, and I think that's a big one that should have made it. So your district and your teachers still need time to look through those and talk about, how they agree, or if there are any additional that they think were left off the list. Keeping in mind that in grades 3 through 12 now, these priority standards will be a majority of the MAP and EOC assessments. By 2024, 80 to 90% of all of the assessments will be over priority standards. Now, at one point there was, and I used it on my network, so I'm trying to clear it up. At one point we thought up to 100% of the assessment would be over those standards, and that is untrue. That would be they found in contradiction of the House bill law when we got the new Missouri Learning Standards. So only 80 to 90%. And honestly, for most contents, even this year, 80, 90% of those assessments are priority standards. So it'll never go higher than that, but that's still a big majority. So at K2, you might add a few. I'd be hesitant to let your teachers add too many more. And then what's on that recommended list at other tested grades, because it pretty much is going to guide a majority of what's on that assessment. Some state documents that are very beneficial for ELA and understanding their standards are the glossary, understanding the vocabulary. They do have, I showed you here, to these supporting materials, some vertical standards. It shows how the MLS develop over time. The MAP and EOC released assessments are very important, and MoBlocks. So I want to spend a moment to show everybody how to get to MoBlocks. If you go to your search engine, you can see I've searched it a million times, and click MoLeap. And we're going to give it a second to find it. If you click on MoLeap and then scroll down, you'll see for MoLeap blocks, and you can click there. It will take you to an external site. These are present for all 4 core contents. Teacher teams have created these map-like instruction and assessment learning modules. So let's just open up. I'm going to go ahead and do social studies. We'll do 6 through 8, American history, and you can see, whoa, there are a lot. Now, not every content has this many. Some have fewer, just depending on how many assessment or how many of these blocks work group could get done. But this is very important for your teachers to go through and find. If they're teaching a unit on the Civil War, and let's say they don't have an assessment, or they're teaching a unit and they don't have great resources, these blocks will have amazing sources about the topic, and they will have map-like questions. On this one, you'll see they have to look at multiple sources. My goodness. And then and it gives a mini assessment. Now, they're not just for assessments. Your teachers could teach 5 or 6 of these sources and then maybe give 1 or 2 of these questions as a formative, or they could give the whole thing, which this looks like a doozy, to students for a summative. But the importance when we talk about clarity of the priority standards, these MoBlocks will be written to the rigor of which kids will be tested on at the state level. Again, if your teachers are relying on, even if they were district purchased and they say they were aligned to our state standards, there's usually a gap in alignment. So I really encourage using released items and these MoBlocks to anchor teachers in the types of tasks, the rigor and question type that students will be exposed to. It'll be very enlightening for them. One of the most common things I find as a consultant is that the rigor of our assessments is below what it needs to be or what kids are exposed to, and therefore our instruction. And it's not because teachers don't want to, it's because they don't understand that. So that's the whole purpose of today's call. The more you could provide clarity on what those standards look like, sound like, to be proficient, the better teachers can actually teach to that standard. In math, again, they've been prioritized. An important thing for teachers to look at here are these expanded math examples. I want to go back to this Missouri DESE site. If we go back to curriculum and look on the right-hand side under mathematics, we're going to click on essential resources. And it's got the item specs there, which are huge, but you'll see it says expanded expectations. I wasn't able to open this earlier, but if you click on those expanded expectations, what happens is it not only shows you the standard over here, it will give you some specific example and sometimes even examples of what that looks like as a question. If your teachers don't have this, I would recommend printing this and even having them highlight that where their priority standards are on it so they could easily read the standard and examples of it. Same with the item specifications that are also on this page. It's not wanting to let me hit the back button, but both of those are going to be very helpful in teachers understanding their standards and what state assessment proficiency looks like. Social studies, a reminder that it has moved from content to where these are tools of inquiry. They're more thinking, as you saw in this assessment that I popped up earlier with lots of sources. It's not as much about remembering, but being able to look at a source and go back and answer questions about it. So very much ELA type skills. Your teachers really need to have time and wrapping their minds around this shift, and the tools of inquiry need to be present within every unit. And it's really pushing your teachers to use more ELA, using a primary, secondary source, considering how people's perspective and how to really manipulate and use and extrapolate information rather than having it memorized. So that's a big shift for them and their priority standards. And then science, all of them were prioritized because they were already reduced in GSS. The best thing that science teachers can look at are those MOBLOCs. They're very robust, and the map released items. If I hop back over here to science, again, these can be used to teach or to assess. You can, the thorny devil lizard, it'll have on here what standards is covered, and then just these great sources of look closely, what do you wonder, and following the scientific process. So some of these blocks the teacher could follow to teach. If you're in a district who doesn't have a ton of resources for elementary, that was part of the reason MOBLOCs were created. They were trying to help close that gap for districts who need resources. But again, it provides clarity on what proficiency looks like for these standards. So once you have teachers have had an opportunity to make sure they know what the released, the updated priority standards are, you've walked them through how to find some of these critical documents, I would recommend, and what I do for my districts is I actually have a one-sheet Google Doc that's a landing page where I have everything hyperlinked, so they don't have to navigate the site like we just did. That is very helpful. But once they've done that, then you need to help create a pacing guide for them so that they have this clear roadmap of when they should be teaching the priority standards. And I always say, if you have a specific resource to pace, this is not what a curriculum purist would say, but in my opinion, I would go ahead and paste it to their resource. So if they have a textbook, let them look within the textbook and find where those priority standards live. This helps teachers make that connection of your textbook is not the curriculum. It is a resource you use to teach your state standards, and having a pacing guide will help with that. So here's an example, and I'll go ahead and slideshow share it so you can see. This is a template that I actually sell for my company for smaller districts who, if you don't have a lot of support, and you haven't revised your curriculum yet, that's something I can come in and do with great ease with your teachers, especially secondary. We can do one course in about 2 hours, but I'm really helping expedite that process by putting the names of their units and then figuring out where the priority standard lives within each that unit. So that helps them know what pieces of the resource they don't need to teach and what standard really needs to be honed in on. This is a second page you'll see in this particular unit. One, it goes down, you read by column. There's quite a few supporting, but only one priority. So that comes up here with pacing. Your teachers will know about how long they need to spend on that. What's interesting when you do this activity, I had a math teacher who her math book was her curriculum, right? And so she filled out this template, and what she found in the first 3 units, there were no priority standards. And then there were others that were very heavily loaded, and some units she only, or chapters she only spent a couple weeks on, and some priority standards that had been left out of the text altogether. So we had some great conversations. If these first 3 chapters had no priority standards, maybe we still needed to change to teach them because they were, excuse me, pivotal standards, but we need to change the pacing so they can get through those more quickly. And turn those priority standards that were covered nowhere, we needed to make sure we added a unit and that they were covered. The key here is making sure you give teachers time to have that reckoning between their state standards and their resource. And a template like this can really help them make the connection that their resource is to teach their guaranteed and viable state curriculum. And the more you can expedite this process for people and make it as quick and painless as possible, the better. In addition, creating a template that you can also organize and hyperlink all important curriculum documents into one space is better for teachers. We need to try to get away from having a million Google drive folders and what's the most updated. You'll see on these templates that I work with my districts, we hyperlink everything onto it. So it really becomes a landing page of your curriculum to your resources. Here's just another example for social studies. Those great links and resources from the DESE website, hyperlink them all into your district's curriculum. I really encourage, many districts are not systematic and organized, and that causes teachers to feel very overwhelmed and they don't have clarity. So part of this talk with clarity of priority standards, you have to give your teachers a system and an organization that helps that clarity come to life for them and to reconcile the difference between a resource and their state standards. And a nice template is an easy way to do that. Again, if you are watching this and just don't have the capacity or need support, you definitely could message me through the network and I could help you with that or show you more about the products I use to help expedite that with teachers. And last, I want to show you, oops, let me go back one more if it's going to let me. Once you have these clear templates in place, the next step is really developing these mirrored assessments to the map. Whether you're using MoBlocks, this MoLeap benchmark, something you can take within DRC is coming up soon. So hopefully you could do that as well. But the more opportunities your teachers have to see, it's not just about scoring well on the test, it's about understanding what their standards mean, what they look like and sound like to be proficient. And the more opportunities you give kids at that rigor, the better everyone will be able to be vertically aligned and do well on those and really show their proficiency. Last, ELA tends to be one of the most difficult contents because their standards can be so ambiguous and have a lot of interpretations. I wanted to show really quickly, my company has also developed some Missouri assessment and teaching tools where for every K through, we will have K through 10 by this May, we'll have a priority standard. We've unwrapped it for you, what a level 4, 3, 2, and 1 is on the left. And on the right-hand side, it helps teachers. I've incorporated all those DESE documents I just spoke about with screenshots so teachers could easily look and see what is an example of what kids should be able to do. And they can use this tool to make map mirrored assessments with great ease. You can't just use your test item banks and count on your resources to have good questions. Again, that's where we're throwing teachers and students off. They think they can just grab something coded to a state standard and it will hit the rigor. It does not. So these tools are used to help teachers. I felt like they needed something that expedited it. They didn't have to go to all those websites. It's just a one-stop shop that they can have clarity. Here's what a level 3 kid should be able to look and say and do. And then the level 2 is if you have a student who cannot do that, here's the vocabulary would need to know. And here are the cognitive strategies you need to back up and teach. So this assessment tool can build great aligned assessments and help with that, but can also scaffold your ELA teachers and their content, because that's the other thing is knowing what do I do when a kid doesn't know it. So if you're interested in that product, that's something that a tool I have made that I've had great progress and had teachers even say, yep, my teacher's aligned. They've used this tool and they found my questions actually land more on a level 2. I hadn't been teaching to level 3. It allows teachers to have that aha rather than me coming in and saying, you know, this assessment's not good. This tool will train your teachers to be proficient and understanding their standards. Again, you can do that by pulling together the state documents. This tool just made it easy for me to have those conversations more quickly. So at the end of today, as we're talking about clarifying what teachers know their standards, you've anchored them in what proficiency looks like. They've paced those priority standards, utilizing your PLCs to have backward design instruction. Once your teachers are clear on what those targets are, we need to get to the how. We spend so much time being stuck in the what of what we should teach. So whether I use my tool to help build instructional capacity with people of how to teach, but be engaging teachers and ideas of how, especially with all the learning gaps we have now, them having a tool of how to scaffold and how to get students ready for that rigor that we now know they'll have to do by making map mirrored assessments is crucial. So Hopefully you were able to get some ideas today on providing clarity to the priority standards. If you have friends who are not on the instructional network, I encourage you to share the link and invite them to join. If you have any questions over anything you've seen today, feel free to email me at shaunastep@stepupconsulting.net, or you can message me directly through the network. The network also at the top left goes to my website if you wanted to know more about some of the curriculum products I shared with you today. Thank you and have a great day.